But then on the second hand, we are obviously working towards securities. That's the big goal, because that's really where we can, scale up to millions or hundreds of millions or even billions in the future of tokenized assets. So we do want to tokenize shares next, company shares. So Apple is kind of the goal of the first stock that we want to tokenize on Cardano, which I think is extremely exciting and is working really well on other chains. And then we're not only talking about stocks, we're also talking about T-bonds, for example, which is a multi-trillion-dollar market.
What's up, Beta Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. My name's Fareed. As a part of today's video, we're diving into finest investments in RWAs coming to Cardano. As a part of today's interview, I'll be joined by one of three co-founders, Patrick Tobler, who's also the founder of Endmaker. Without any further ado, Patrick, welcome up. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I am doing great. This is actually the first time that I've had you on the channel, so I'm excited to dive into finest. And I think I need to get you back on for an additional interview for Endmaker.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I'm very privileged to finally be on your channel. I know you talk a lot about Endmaker and all the things we've been doing in the past, so super happy to be finally here.
Thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy man. As a part of today's video, we'll be diving into finest investments. You guys have officially launched your first sales that is completely sold out. That was a huge announcement at Rare Evo. I believe the second announcement, or excuse me, the second RWA has just been teased. So I'd love to dive into that. But I also want to discuss sort of like the RWA, the tokenization process, and where the opportunity lies here for the Cardano community. Now, before we dive into any of that, I'd love to maybe get a little bit of background about you and the team that's actually put finest investments together. So maybe we can kick off with a little bit of that.
Sure, absolutely. So, I've been in Cardano for quite a while now. I started Endmaker 3.5 years ago, almost, which is unbelievable if I think about it. It's been so long. And Endmaker is basically like an infrastructure platform, right? So it's the underlying infrastructure below many of those projects like Book.io and many others, and including finest investments, of course. And essentially what we realized is, okay, we started with minting NFTs and there was a lot of hype around NFTs, but it was never really sustainable with all these like 10K collections and a lot of profile pictures. Obviously there's good projects there, but it's not really sustainable in the long term. So we really focus on utility and we focus on projects that are here for the long term. So that's why I love Book.io as a customer, for example, because there, you can tell, okay, it makes sense. They will be around in 10 years, ideally. And then, we saw this opportunity with real world assets, which is, I can go into that in a little bit, but essentially we said, okay, let's do real world assets on Cardano. It's a huge opportunity and it's really sustainable. It's a really cool concept, but we cannot do it alone because there's a lot to it. We need to be experts in legal. We need to be able to build very quickly. We need to have a DeFi component. So we basically said, okay, let's partner with IMX, which is the second company, and with Fluid Tokens. So essentially we said, okay, let's do a joint venture. These three companies come together and we'll build finest investments as a launch pad where we can actually tokenize those real world assets. And, that started sometime last year. And now we finally launched the first real world assets there. And as you mentioned, we're planning to launch a lot more in the future and want to scale this up a lot because honestly, Cardano is a top 10 cryptocurrency and there are basically zero real-world assets there right now. And if you look at other chains, there's billions and billions of dollars tokenized. So we should be, pushing this, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is a huge opportunity. And I want to quickly just share the website for anybody who wants to check it out before we dive into the weeds or the details here. It's available at finest.investments. Of course, everything will be left down in the video description for today. All right, Patrick, just generally speaking, RWAs have been a hot topic. We've heard of companies like BlackRock getting involved in just a lot more traditional platforms or traditional institutions. I'd love to hear, what your definition of RWAs is for anybody who might be new to the space or new to the concept.
Mm-hmm. So I always like to think about crypto in these different phases, right? And the first phase was really, okay, everything that's digital, right? Everything that's just digital and just living on the blockchain, like a meme coin could be that, or DeFi, all these platforms. But, when we're talking about real world real world assets, it's essentially taking it one step further, and it's combining the blockchain with just physical assets, right? So it could be whatever. The definition is very broad. It could be real estate, it could be a car, it could be milk, it could be a painting. It doesn't really matter, as long as it exists in the physical actual world. And essentially what you do is you take this physical piece and you tokenize it. So you put it on chain or put a representation of it on chain. And by doing that, you suddenly have the ability to just trade it and use it in DeFi and send it from A to B very quickly. And you're not really dependent on, for example, saying, okay, having like a luxury art piece or so, and then having to ship it from Canada to Switzerland or something like that. But instead, you can just send it on a blockchain and have it in custody somewhere. So it's really about efficiency and about making it more accessible to everyone as well.
And I think what sort of has given you an advantage is the fact that EndMaker is already tokenizing a lot of different things, right? So could you maybe highlight how that has helped you, or how that's given you guys an advantage when it comes to finance investments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so EndMaker, as I said, is basically infrastructure, right? So anyone can come and they can build their own platform on top of EndMaker, and they can just launch whatever they like. It's very unrestricted, right? So, anyone can come and build their own real world asset tokenization platform on top of EndMaker if they want to. But we also said, okay, we want to build this launchpad, so we want to get a little bit away from just doing the B2B, where we just work with projects and businesses, and we want to actually build a consumer-facing product, which is Finest, and we want to build it on top of EndMaker because we have all the infrastructure already. Let's just use the infrastructure. It's our tool. We can build stuff on top probably better than most projects, right? So everything was already existing, and the only thing we actually had to develop was the front end. It was like the user management, stuff like that. So it was really easy for us to get into real world assets from a technology perspective, at least.
Nice. Now, there's two key things I want to highlight about Finest, and I would love to get your perspective on that. And the first is the fact that I believe everything you guys are developing will be open source, meaning that anybody else can come after you guys and take advantage of it. And then the second is that you guys are actually BaFin compliant. There's a smart contract, I believe, that's in place that is regulatory compliant. Do you mind breaking down the importance of open sourcing and then the importance of making sure that everything is done correctly from a legal perspective?
Mhm. Yeah, I think open source in general is super important. Of course, we're in crypto, so I'm not saying everything needs to be open source, but at least the key components need to be open source. Everything that has to do with smart contracts, everything that's on chain needs to be open source, so that people can actually verify and check if it's working as intended, and you don't have to trust anyone, because that's what crypto is about. That you reduce as much trust as possible, right? And for us, we're basically doing exactly that. We're not open sourcing everything because we're not open sourcing the front end, because honestly, the front end doesn't really matter. Of course, we can open source it if people want it, but it doesn't. It's not important. So what we are focusing on is we want to open source all the smart contracts we're developing. And you mentioned something there, which is the BaFin smart contract, and the BaFin is essentially the German SEC. So we're not. We don't have the smart contract live yet, but we are working on it. And it's quite an interesting topic, because essentially, to be able to really tokenize securities in Germany, you need to fulfill a few requirements, and you need to have basically a smart contract that is approved and audited and all this kind of stuff. And there are currently 2 smart contracts like that, but they both run on EVM. So obviously that's not very helpful for us, because we want to tokenize on Cardano. So what we decided to do is we decided to build our own smart contract, and we are basically going to go through the whole, flow and document everything, and then approve it with the BaFin, and then basically be able to use it to launch security tokens on Cardano. And once that's happening, that's a huge advantage for Cardano, in my opinion, because right now this is not possible on any other non-EVM chain, right? So not Solana or not, any of these others. So I'm very, very excited for that. But maybe to give you a little bit more of a broader perspective, every asset is different, right? So there are some assets which are clearly securities. There are other assets which are not securities. So, for example, with the first asset that we launched, Granite, it's not a security. So we do not need the smart contract. And our legal setup allows us to just mint regular Cardano native tokens, which is amazing because we can just say, okay, you can use those on MinSwap, on Dex Hunter, whatever. They're unrestricted. Yeah, exactly. That's the Granite. That's an AI picture, by the way. But yeah, essentially, that's it. So we go from asset to asset, and we have to assess every asset differently. We have to check, okay, in which country are we tokenizing it? How do we do the legal compliance and so on? And then we basically have to work through it. And our goal is to tokenize a lot of assets and build up our understanding so that it becomes easier for us to tokenize the next one. And we can kind of like templatize this tokenization service, essentially.
Nice. So, understanding that, I'd love to dive into the details of the first ever sale. You just mentioned the Granite. Could you walk us through the process from start to finish about, the mining process, the tokenization process, the certification process, the actual NFT sale? And then, if I'm not mistaken, there's an opportunity to earn 10%. So I'd love to hear about, how that opportunity comes about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, essentially, a little bit of context. There's an area in India which tokenizes, which mines granite. Exactly. This is an image from one of the mines there. I was there in person. I visited this mine. I watched the blasting of the mine. I met with the owner of the mine and had a lot of long discussions and listened to their problems and what they want to do and all these things. And what's special about those mines is that they are actually mining very special granite called Black Galaxy granite, which is very rare and very expensive. It's basically that fancy looking one that everyone is using in their kitchens for the kitchen counter and stuff like that. So it gets shipped out to the world, and it's only getting mined in this specific area in India. And essentially, what's happening there is that there's like 200 or 300 mines that are mining this, and none of them are really huge. So none of them are billion-dollar businesses, but all of them are like basically a few $1 million worth businesses. And they all have a liquidity problem because mining is extremely expensive. You have to pay for labor costs, you have to pay for fuel, you have to pay for very expensive machinery, you have to pay for sometimes just getting the water back out of the mine because it's raining. So there's a lot of costs associated with mining. So many of those mines could scale up, but they cannot because they don't have enough liquidity. And the only way they can do it right now is by going to the government, asking for a loan, and basically saying, okay, can we get a loan, and then we're going to pay it back to you at some point, and so on. So like a very normal process. But this is very complicated in India. There's a lot of different things attached to it, and so on. So what we discussed with this mine was to basically work on an alternative liquidity source, which is us selling the granite immediately in the moment it gets mined. So what happens is typically the mine mines the granite, and then it's just getting stored there for a few months, maybe like 3 months or so, until they are able to sell it for a profit. So in that time, they have to spend the money, and then 3 months they're not getting a return on their money, and they cannot use that liquidity to actually mine more. So what they're doing is they're basically selling the people that want to buy this tokenized granite, the granite in the moment that it gets mined out of the mine. And it's kind of like a pre-sale in a way. And then after 3 months, when they actually find a real business that wants to buy the granite from them, like in the regular Web2 kind of world, then what happens is that they pay back the additional profit and the whole like sales price of the granite to the token owners. So it's actually not an NFT, it's a fungible token, but it represents a very specific part of a granite badge. So we have like basically I think it's 3 tons or something like that worth of granite, and it's marked with a special marker, and that's exactly what you own a fraction of. And once that gets sold, you get the money back.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd love to dive into what this looks like from an end user's perspective. So, do you mind walking us through these 3 steps to get involved through the actual Finest Investments platform?
Yeah. So we built Finest in a way so that it's extremely easy to use for non-Web3 customers, because we want to expand into, the non-Web3 world, because we truly believe, okay, by tokenizing assets that are previously not very accessible, it's an interesting investment opportunity, not only for crypto enthusiasts, but for everyone, right? So what we did is we built the platform in a way where it basically resembles something like eToro or Robinhood or whatever, any of those like regular stock investment platforms, where you create an account and then you first top up your account to get a balance into the account, and then you can invest. And the way it works behind the scenes is essentially you create this account with a regular, social login or with your email and a password. And then what happens is we automatically create 2 wallets for you. So we create a non-custodial Cardano wallet, and we create a non-custodial Polygon wallet for you behind the scenes. And they're both created in a way using Web3 auth, which is like a like a MPC kind of wallet where it's split up and it's still non-custodial, but it's very secure and very easy, and you never have to see any passphrase, and you don't really have to know that there's even a wallet involved. And then what you can do is you can basically just do a bank transfer. The money gets converted into USDC on Polygon. We put that into your USDC or your Polygon wallet, and then you can use that to invest into any of those assets. And the end customer, they don't even really know what's going on behind the scenes. I'm just explaining it to you because obviously you're a crypto person, and everyone watching this is probably very into crypto. But from an end customer perspective, the goal was really to just make it as easy as possible and allow credit card top-ups, bank top-ups, but also, of course, ADA and Bitcoin and so on. So everything gets converted into USDC, and then you can pay with that. And then you would receive regular tokens on your Cardano native wallet. And then you can essentially say, if you want to go deeper into the crypto ecosystem, that you want to transfer those tokens out of your Finest wallet and Finest account and just send them to your Nami wallet or something like that.
I think one thing that we have to highlight in this discussion is security. I know that from an end user's perspective, you guys do provide certificates when purchases are actually made for any of these fungible assets. Could you discuss, from maybe like the mine's perspective, what's being done to make sure that in the event that somebody does actually want to redeem the granite, which I'm sure is highly unlikely, but in the event that they do, what measures are there to make sure that that can actually happen?
Yeah, so essentially we split up the whole tokenization process into 2 parts. One of them is what you actually buy with the token. What you actually buy is the granite, right? So if you buy a token, you own part of this granite, and you physically own it. You can go there, you can pick it up, you can do whatever you like it. You actually own it. That's the tokenization aspect, and that's verified by our partnership with LCX, which is an exchange in Liechtenstein. So it's basically tokenized under the Liechtenstein law, and they are a physical validator. So they are basically making sure that the granite is actually there. It's all legit. They're like an audit company, so to speak. And then in theory, of course, you could go to India and make sure that you pick up the granite and transport it anywhere else, but that's really not the goal of it. So we have the second aspect where we say, okay, everyone who is purchasing the granite token and by this owning the granite also has the opportunity to have a contract with the mine and giving the mine the rights to resell the granite in your name. So it's kind of like a car salesmanship where you give out your used car, and then the car dealer is selling it for you, and then the profit gets transferred back to you. So it's a very Web2 kind of contract, and it has nothing to do with the actual tokenization aspect of it. And then, of course, there's some clauses in the contract that the mine, like if the granite gets damaged, the mine is is the one responsible for that. So there's a lot of stuff there to protect the owners of the Granite, which are the token holders. Yes. So there's not really anything that can go wrong. And even if the mine goes bankrupt right now, the mine will not sell the granite because it's not their granite anymore, right? So you would basically have to go there and you would have to pick it up and have to make sure that it gets sold on the market or something like that, because you are the legal owner and the mine is just a custodian for you, essentially.
Yeah, I hope that particular scenario doesn't play out, but obviously you want
Of
to
course,
plan
yeah.
for the worst.
Yeah.
So one thing that you discussed earlier was a wallet on Polygon, and I'm not sure, maybe I missed it. I was maybe multitasking, but do you mind breaking down why Polygon or that blockchain is involved in this process? And then one thing that we haven't discussed, and again, I may have missed this, is just the actual redemption of the fungible tokens for whatever that interest rate is. So I'd love to hear a little bit about both of those, if you could, Polygon and then the redemption of the actual fungible token.
Yeah, so we were thinking about, okay, how do we actually handle the payment for the granite? What does the mine actually get? We cannot give the mine ADA. That's not going to work. They don't care about ADA. They don't want to have the fluctuations. They don't want to have to go to any exchange or so. They want to have a stable asset, right? So we have to give them a stable coin. And unfortunately, as it stands right now, there's no stable coin on Cardano with enough liquidity for us to do that. Obviously, USDM is growing and the USDA is coming and JET is there and so on. But if we are planning to tokenize more assets, we need to be able to, talk about millions and millions of dollars worth of stable coins. And then suddenly we're running into a problem. And because of that, we said, okay, let's just split the whole tokenization process from the whole payment process and handle the payment completely in USDC on Polygon, because there's like 30 billion or something like that available. And we can easily use any on-ramp tools because, there's like basically every single on-ramp tool out there supports USDC on Polygon. So we can do the credit card on-ramping. We can do the bank transfer on-ramping. We can easily exchange Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on for USDC. And then we handle the payment in USDC, and then we can still tokenize the asset on whatever chain we like. And in our case, that's of course Cardano. But we basically split the whole scenarios from each other. So we are not dependent on, stablecoin liquidity developing positively on Cardano or anything like that.
Got it. Thank you. And again, I think you may have briefly highlighted that in your first explanation. I just may have missed it, but I do appreciate you breaking that down. The redemption process, could you highlight how that works?
Yes. So the redemption process obviously is not out yet because there's like a 3-month period until you can redeem, approximately. And the way it will work is you just go to the website and you will be able to burn your token. So you can just send it to an address, it will get burned. And then you will receive basically the payout in USDC in your Finest account. And then what you could do is you could basically do a transfer and transfer all the USDC out to your like regular wallet, or you can transfer it to your exchange and exchange it for whatever you like, dollars. Or you can invest it into the next asset. So for us, obviously, it's would be interesting to get people their money and then they can invest it immediately into the next asset listed on Finest.
And that's actually going to be a great segue into the next assets. But before we dive into that, I've got one more question. So I'd love to hear about how Finest keeps the lights on. So is there a portion or a fee that's paid out to Finest? How are you guys able to generate, profit from this?
Yeah, so we have multiple revenue streams, and I'll be fully honest, we are still working on finding out the exact revenue model to see like what will work. But essentially, we are taking a percentage of the sale, of course. So we want to earn with every token sold. And we also are earning with the top up. So every time you send money to Finest to convert it to USDC, we take a percentage of that as well as our commission. And then we are exploring in the future or we at least thought about it, and we want to explore in the future a few more avenues. So, for example, liquidity provision for some of those assets could be very profitable for us, but also for other people, of course. Also having fees on the DEXs, potentially even integrating a DEX into Finest itself, something like that. These are all just things we're thinking about, and we haven't really decided yet, but that's kind of where we want to see our revenue coming from.
Thank you. Pivoting back to future assets or additional assets, what comes next? As you mentioned earlier, the Granite doesn't necessarily require the BOFIN smart contract. So I'm sure from like your guys' perspective, it's like, hey, let's get out whatever we can that doesn't require the smart contract before we do. But I'm also sure that there's a lot of interest in things that are a little bit more regulated. So can you share any alpha with us about what to expect next?
Absolutely. So we are basically going into multiple directions at once, as you said. So the Granite, we will be waiting until the 3-month period is over, and we distributed the first profit, so people really understand, okay, this is all legit. There's no scam here. The money is actually coming. So we're like doing it very slowly with the Granite. But then on the second hand, we are obviously working towards securities. That's the big goal, because that's really where we can scale up to millions or hundreds of millions or even billions in the future of tokenized assets. So we do want to tokenize shares next, company shares. So that's why you pulled it up. So Apple is kind of the goal of the first stock that we want to tokenize on Cardano, which I think is extremely exciting and is working really well on other chains. And then we're not only talking about stocks, we're also talking about T-bonds, for example, which is a multi-trillion-dollar market. So that's something we're hoping to get out in the next 2 months. The majority of work there is really from a legal perspective, unfortunately. And we have to work with a lot of partners and custodians. I have to pay a lot of money for like really unnecessary things, but unfortunately it's required. And because this is only in a few months, we will tokenize one other asset before, and I can drop the alpha. It will be gold, because we also do not need to treat it as a security, so it's relatively simple for us to tokenize. And while I'm personally not mega excited about gold, we checked with the community and saw that everyone loves gold and everyone likes the idea of owning some gold on Cardano. So we said, okay, let's just do it. It's pretty simple for us to do it. Why not just go out with it? And maybe it might even be out when this video comes. I'm not sure, but probably not. But it's coming very soon. So.
Well, I'm aiming to get the video out in the next 3 to 4 days. So hopefully you guys are ready by then. But no, thanks for sharing the alpha. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Depending on when this particular video goes out, ladies and gentlemen, watching the video, check out the description down below to the official Finance platform, and then to any official information that they may have shared about their upcoming asset sales. I feel like we've discussed quite a bit here, Patrick. Is there anything that, we maybe have skipped as a part of the process? I feel like we've covered the tokenization, custodians, security, certificates, redemptions, the interest, and then future assets. Anything that comes to mind?
No, I think you're right. We covered almost everything. Of course, there's like a lot of details and stuff, but we don't have to go into them here. Everyone who's interested can just go to finest.investments and check it out and read through everything in much more detail. But we try to keep it as simple as possible, right? It needs to be a simple product. People need to be able to understand it easily, invest easily. So there's not much complexity to it from a user perspective.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that'll do it here for today's video. Patrick Tobler, one of 3 founders of Finest Investments, bringing RWAs to Cardano. Again, Patrick, thank you. Look forward to catching up with you once Apple shares, gold, etc. have gone out. And again, would love to get you back on here to discuss Endmaker and what you guys are contributing there to Cardano. I've enjoyed this chat. Again, thank you for your time. For you, the viewer watching at home, if you found any portion of today's interview to be helpful or insightful, I would appreciate you if you could smash smash that thumbs up. It's one of the best ways to support me here as a content creator. It also helps to get this information outside of the growing Cardano ecosystem. If you want more information like this, breaking down or highlighting all the builders here within the growing Cardano ecosystem, consider subscribing to Dapp Central. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me or Patrick as it pertains to any other assets, the BOFIN smart contract, the tokenization process, whatever it is, make sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'll be monitoring those. But that said, and as always, we'll catch you all in the next video. Cheers, everybody.